you have this to look forward to, too. So I wasn't going to start here, but I will. Your instincts with the umbrella were exactly right. I'm big on practical reasoning, and my 35 years on the street say when a man has a gun at your head, do exactly what he says very politely. And it worked. So, I think you're going to hear the same thing from all three of us, which is that we are honored beyond our ability to convey it. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I am sort of an academic, which means I sort of talk for a living, and I'm pretty good at it. And I'm rarely unsure of what I think, for better or for worse, some of either, some of both. And I'm rarely at a loss about how to get that across, and this is very much an exception to that. I got this call from Swarthmore that I was to receive this degree a couple of months ago, and it was so unexpected at the time that I literally could not take in what was being said to me. You know, I stared at the phone wondering what those words meant, because they certainly couldn't mean what they seemed to. And I knew then that I'd be expected to say a couple of things today, and I've had all that time to think about this, and I really haven't done too much better. So this is my not very successful attempt to convey what getting this degree means for me. So I am standing here to begin with in front of my parents, Chris and Jane, as mentioned, and I'm going to embarrass them mightily and ask them to stand up for a second. They're right over here. They met here over 60 years ago, so Swarthmore is more literally than I'm comfortable with, the reason I'm standing here. I'm grateful to all of my dad's ex-girlfriends. As I grew up, their love for this place and what it meant to them was really part of the fabric of my family. And it's not why I came here, but it is a large part of why I even knew about Swarthmore and eventually did make my own decision to come here. When I got my acceptance letter, my father cried. And when my mom dropped me off for my first visit, she was so overcome that she couldn't stay while I wandered around and took my first look. That family, the family I grew up in, and the tone my parents set for me and my three sisters, or two sisters, three of us, was a fiercely moral one. Some of that, I think, came naturally to both of them. My mother has the carefree, self-indulgent nature typical of those who grow up in Scots families. And my father came here to be a mechanical engineer, which is itself a pragmatic, no-nonsense kind of calling. But the larger part of it, I think, was a set of choices, a kind of fundamental framework for how they came to believe it was correct to approach the world, at least some of which I am convinced they learned here at Swarthmore. So the morality I was raised in was not received or religious or really even that easy to specify. It was an overarching attitude that said, do your homework, educate yourself, know what you're talking about, think clearly, and do the right thing. Do that responsibly, I was raised to believe. Do your best, and you will have no one either to answer to or to apologize to. Do any less than that, and you are violating your obligations to yourself, to being a responsible person, to being an adult and a citizen. And I've come to believe that that's a pretty good gloss on what a liberal arts education, and particularly this college, seeks to produce. I mean, people who feel obliged to and capable of thinking and acting clearly, independently, effectively, and rightly. So I sat in a chair out where you are over 30 years ago. I found out today that if you're in honors, you still stand there by the post office box wondering if you're going to make it out. I wasn't at all sure of that. I was delighted and relieved to be being graduated, and I had absolutely not the slightest idea of what I was going to do next. So it's been mentioned today that just as when I was sitting where you are, people have jobs, people have academic honors, people have fellowships, people have athletic exploits, people have started nonprofits and arts organizations and published books and published songs, and that was all true in 1982. Those were the other kids. I hadn't done any of that. And maybe not by accident, I found myself a few years later standing in the worst crack market in Los Angeles. And every time I say this, I have to say that I was there in a professional capacity. And I saw the unspeakable devastation around me and thought, we have to do something about this. And I've been at that ever since. And 30 years later, I can stand here and say we have, in fact, figured out what to do about much of the worst of the violence and fear and racial tension that saturate America's most troubled and oppressed communities. That work has been done, that path has been traveled by a growing community of extraordinary people who have refused to accept that these problems could not be solved, have been willing to think in unexpected and often very deeply unpopular ways, and have honored equally clear thinking and effective action. That community is saving lives, restoring neighborhoods, and dissolving racial animosity all across the United States. It is so profound on the ground that it is often called a miracle. It is not a miracle. It is real people doing real work with relentless intellectual, practical, and moral seriousness. Nobody taught any of us how to do it. We've been making it up as we go along, often in considerable terror. I genuinely believe that the habits of mind, the kind of fundamental orientation that my folks bred into me at home and that was honed here at Swarthmore are central to why we have been able to make our way. Hans Oberdiek, who was just with me, one of my favorite professors and my thesis advisor for my honors paper on Immanuel Kant, is here. I loved my work with him and my other faculty here at Swarthmore, and then I sat where you are in 1980 and thought, what in God's name is a Swarthmore philosophy degree good for? And I stand here today with at least one answer to that question. It's worked for me. And since this is a day, above all, to honor you and your accomplishments, and for me to say to you, I want your hat. To celebrate your making it and your accomplishments and your family's probably indescribable joy in your accomplishments. Let me say that this thing that we've been doing has been the most unexpected and wonderful adventure. I could not have imagined sitting there and thinking that I was going to do anything remotely like what I have turned out to have committed myself to. So from this other side, I am delighted to tell you that if you don't chain yourself to the desks at the library and keep on going, that's what's going to happen to all of you too, right? You are setting your feet on your own unexpected and wonderful path. And let me predict also that some of you here today will get your own phone call a couple of decades hence, and you won't be able to understand it either, and you will be at least as overwhelmed and overjoyed as I was. Thank you.